Yeah. Speaking into that, I think that for me, I've always been a very driven person and I've always wanted to be a better person in the future. And with coming with that, I was diving in deeper into self-development, which I was able to, share with Harsha. And in our relationship, we're very fortunate that we had, our self-development journey with different coaches and mentors, which really, evolved our relationship to be better for each other. But really first becoming better for one another, for ourselves, and then coming together later on. And the second part to your question is really those big downfalls, those tough times that we went through, I would say catapulted our relationship and, really brought us to where we are now because we were able to learn, grow, and it absolutely wasn't easy. There's still definitely, things that we're working through to this day. However, without those events and those experiences, like we wouldn't be where we are right now, and we
Yeah.
would, and like, I believe everything happens for a reason and God only gives us what we can handle to become who we need to become in this lifetime to live our purpose.
All right, team. Hey, welcome to another episode of Mediocre Dads, where being mediocre is a choice and you have to refuse to be mediocre every single day. I'm your host, Queon. I go by Q, of course. And on this episode, as you could tell, and I said it was going to come, right? And I let you guys know, I have both of the amazing Sosas on. And I'm super excited to have both of them on because, like, when we spoke about it originally, it was like, hey, talk to her, talk to him, and then have them both on together. And because I think you got individual perspectives, but it's always great to have both of their perspectives at the same time, especially them being a married couple and both being in the passion and it's their passion being similar. It's really great to hear from them and parenting, especially because usually when you only hear one side of the parenting spectrum, you can kind of be like, I get that as a dad, or I get that as a mother. But when you got both of them, it just makes the conversation that more amazing. And as I was telling Aaron, I'm here to put him on the spot as the father because, listen, our wives hold us to a standard and we sometimes don't know what that standard is. So, but it's a great standard and it keeps us on our toes and it keeps us happy, keeps them happy, right? So it's amazing. But that being said, before we get too deep into it, see the looks right there? That's what I was looking for. That's what I wanted. Yes. It was the look of like, yeah, I keep you on your toes, don't I? Yeah, exactly. Say that. I want you to say it in the camera. Don't say it. It's just trap. It's a trap. I'm here for you.
We talked about this already. We knew.
uh, but that being said, you guys already know them, so I won't have. We don't need to necessarily go deep dive into like who they are, but um, diving right into it. For you guys. So you guys, I talked to you guys both, and when we were talking, you guys both do the same thing, more or less the same thing, if you will. I don't want to downplay what you guys do, and demean it by any means, but you guys are both heavily involved in breath work, and really just helping other people understand what that looks like. So for Harsha, did you get into that first, or it sounded like you got into it first, and then Aaron was to follow? And I think I asked it on when we spoke on our episode, but did you always know that this is something that you wanted to do and this is where you wanted your passion to be as far as where you felt like, hey, this is where I feel most alive, where I'm really helping people?
Yes, to answer your question, I did dive into the space first, and then Aaron joined in. The second question, and we talked about this a little bit at the beginning of our conversation last time. I actually thought I was going to be a doctor for most of my life.
Mhm.
And really the core of that was I always have known that I was meant to serve in a way that like I could help people feel better, whether they were down from like an illness or something. There was this calling, and my purpose ever since I was a little girl was like, if I can help people feel better, like I'm serving my purpose in this lifetime. And so that becoming a doctor for a majority of it, which I'm really grateful for because it sent me into a realm of studies of like the human body and things like this, which now, even though I'm not in that space in like clinical medicine, having that kind of information with the work I'm doing now with breathwork really helps support me having like a different angle at it. And to be honest, I feel like I am still fulfilling on that purpose because in another way, I do still help people feel better, but more from like the emotional, mental, somatic energy healing space rather than like the clinical medicine space.
Yeah. And so I guess for you, Aaron, when you guys met, I mean, you guys did. Let me first ask this. So, did you guys meet in college, right? You guys, that's if I understand it, you guys met in college. No, you met
No,
before that.
yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
I was finishing up college and he was,
I was just
yeah,
working at that time. I was a real estate agent full time. But we met each other
Oh, okay.
we met each other partying. That's where we met each other.
Listen, I love it. I love the honesty. You know, so many and younger people. Oh gosh, they irritate me. So like a lot of the soldiers I have, right? They've met their significant other, which is not a terrible thing. But I am weary about it on dating apps, and I'm like, so like your first interaction with this person was through a screen versus like meeting them in person and being able to really judge their energy and be able to like, oh, okay, like no, like we got a vibe. There's something here, rather than just over text message or whatever the case might be. But the relationships are going. Some of them are still going. Some of them are not. But that being said, I love it because I like meeting a person that you end up spending the rest of your life with in person. It just adds more to the like, hey, we met at a party, it was crazy, but like, look at us now. You know what I mean? Because I imagine when you met her at the party, or even for you, Arsha, when you met him at the party, it was not it was like, yeah, this is gonna be my husband one day. This is the man I'm gonna marry. Or you're like, yep, look, guys, that's my wife over there. I don't know if you see her, but that's my wife. Like, so like, how did that come to fruition when you guys met? How did that come for you guys?
you cut out right when you were
Oh,
asking that
sorry.
question.
Oh, it's
So
good. The delay. By the way, I know there might be some delays. I'm able to edit those out, so we are good that way. But I asked. I said it was when you guys saw each other at the party. You met at a party. So like, how did this flower into hey, we're getting married. We're having a son together, and we're moving to Dubai. Like, how did that come from that meeting at that party? What I guess the stepping stones, if you will, that led to that.
I
Either
can
one
answer
could
that.
take it.
Well, for me, when we first met, there was something inside that I knew she was the one. I
Yeah.
really knew that at a level. It was something that I felt so connected to, and it just felt right. But at that time, it was probably so wrong for all the wrong reasons. Because I mean, we were both coming from wounded places, really. And but it was the beginning of our relationship. Like it literally every step along the way of the last 10 years has been an opportunity for growth and evolution. And it wasn't always like this, like where we're at now. It wasn't even close to this. When we were engaged, there was a lot of ups and downs. When we got married, the first couple of years of marriages were some of the most challenging years I've ever had in my life, and I'm sure it's the same for her. And right up to this point now, where every year I feel like we're getting closer. Our bond has been growing. We're able to communicate on a deeper level. And of course, throwing a little guy into the mix now, it makes it all come together fully. Like heart is whole full, being with him and, living our lives now with the family.
Yeah,
I'm
man.
sure you can relate to that.
Yeah, well, I met my wife, and I think I was telling you this, Harsh. I met my wife when I was in 7th grade. She was in 6th grade.
Wow.
That's when I first met my wife, but we didn't start dating until I was going into my junior year. She was going to her senior year, in 2011. Actually, I don't know why I know this. I know why I know this date, but part of me doesn't like I know this date. July 17th of 2011 is when we actually started dating. She reminds me every year, but but yeah. So I totally resonate. Me and my wife, we just hit 10 years, our 10-year anniversary in September, our marriage anniversary. So like I get it. Like a lot of ups and downs especially in those beginning years, because you don't really know what you're getting into. Like people can tell you, but it doesn't really live up to when you're actually doing it, right? Because in your head, like, especially when we're younger and we're getting married and we're like, hey, I'm about to be with this person all the time. It's going to be so great. There's never going to be moments we're not together. And then you're like, when do I get me time? When does that me time happen? I still love this person, but I'm always with them. So like the first couple of years for you guys, what were some of the challenges that you experienced that you didn't think that you would experience?
Well, like for me at that time was when I was at that like edge or call it breaking point of really getting clear that the medicine route wasn't for me. And so I was like having a full like identity crisis at the time with my like what I was going to do in my life. And culturally, there was a lot of pressure within my like family unit and things with that area of life. So for me to be in a relationship, and also this was the first relationship for me. I had not dated anybody before this. I was just so focused in other things in my life. Like guys were not it for me. So now to have all this happening in my life with everything I used to be so clear on now is becoming unclear. And then now there's this whole other like thing going on, a relationship, which I had never had any experience on about in there, which is adding its own stuff. And we were living at the time, doesn't seem like that far anymore, but it was like a 45 minutes drive. I was in the suburbs and he was living in the downtown of Vancouver. And so just that, and although I was at like that breaking point, I was still like in school. I was wrapping up my last year. I had exams. So I had a lot just like taking my time and attention outside of the relationship. And then the relationship was asking for a lot of my attention. When I say relationship, I say him. He was asking for a lot of my time and attention. And so it was like really for me, like splitting me up in many different places. And it just became difficult to be myself, to know like who am I. And so as a result of that, like what I was bringing into the relationship was like that, like really fragmented pieces of me. I had certain insecurities and things because again, first time for me with a lot of the experiences that for him, like he was like, this was like a normal thing. And so it became challenging to be with all of it, to be able to like communicate, to be able to like speak up was a challenge for me. So I know like I bottled a lot of things in when I could have just like brought it to him as like his girlfriend at the time. So those were some of the like in the first couple of years, the biggest challenges for me to like just be with all the things that were pulling me and calling me at one time.
Yeah. I think, at that time of our relationship, we were still kids. She was in her early 20s. I was in my late 20s, but I still think we're growing and, we're still not even real adults at that point. And so we're still learning about life, really. And there's so many parts of me that if you look back 10 years ago, you wouldn't see that within me anymore. And those parts of me probably, brought up a lot of things in our relationship. They brought up a lot of things for me. And I was the type of person where I couldn't be by myself. I couldn't be alone. And when she says, there was a lot of me in that first couple of years together, it's because I was that type of person where I didn't know how to be by myself. And that's one of the things that she has taught me and actually allows me the space is for me to have my time within myself. And it's brought me back to like my true authentic self. So I'm very grateful for that.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'll start off saying that one, I appreciate you guys' honesty. Not that you would lie, but when you talk to a lot of couples, different couples, and I'm sure you guys have spoken to them before, is there's this hesitancy to be honest, especially when it seems like it's critiquing your significant other. And so it's like, well, I'm not, maybe I shouldn't say that because I don't want to I don't want to put them on the spot, but then also I don't want to make it seem like there's a fracture in the armor, if you will, or a chink in the armor of what our relationship is. And so like the honesty, I think it's a powerful thing because then one, it puts you guys on the same page. And I think a lot of couples struggle with that is being on the same page a lot of times. When as simple as it is, as simple as just saying like, hey, this is where I'm struggling with, or this is what's hard when I'm having a hard time with. So I do appreciate the honesty. And so for you guys then, to work through that, to navigate through that, what was the thing that got you through that, right? Because, you're going through this, you're, like you said, you're doing your exams, you're in this headspace of like, hey, this, my future's planned out. Like I know where I want to, I know what the end, the crossing the finish line looks like. I know what it looks like to get there, but never, I won't say never, but it's hard to imagine at that time when you're envisioning these things of like, oh, well, then I'm going to have a boyfriend who's going to be there. And, but I also have to give him time and give him effort, give him some of me, but I also want to be successful in my career. And so how did you guys navigate that, right? Like, well, for both ends, like you're doing what you're doing, and Aaron, you're over there doing what you're doing, successful in your own merits, but at the same time, you're like, I have a relationship that I want to grow and to feed and what. So like, how did you guys work yourself through that and to be where you are now?
Yeah. Speaking into that, I think that for me, I've always been a very driven person, and I've always wanted to be a better person in the future. And coming with that, I was diving in deeper into self-development, which I was able to, share with Harsha. And in our relationship, we're very fortunate that we had, our self-development journey with different coaches and mentors, which really, evolved our relationship to be better for each other. But really first becoming better for one another, for ourselves, and then coming together later on. And the second part to your question is really like those big downfalls, those tough times that we went through, I would say catapulted our relationship and, really brought us to where we are now, because we were able to learn, grow, and it absolutely wasn't easy. There's still definitely, things that we're working through to this day. However, without those events and those experiences, like we wouldn't be where we are right now, and we wouldn't, and like, I believe everything happens for a reason, and God only gives us what we can handle to become who we need to become in this lifetime to live our purpose. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. Definitely, yes, the personal development. When we started dating, not too long before that, he had joined a coaching group with real estate. And that, like just putting an investment in someone else, like teaching you how to do things. And it was real estate coaching, but really it became like a lifestyle way of coaching, which naturally I started to pick up on and started to go with him to different seminars that we started to explore outside of the real estate world. And to be honest, thanks to that, I got this like, we talked about on our podcast, the empowerment of like, oh, I can do these things which I had not given myself the possibility to do, which is like to speak up and say to my parents, like, I don't want to be a doctor. I don't know yet, but I just know that's not for me. So can we like let the pressure off of that? And so thanks to these little steps of personal development, it helped me just see the world in a new way. And for me, the type of person I am, who just like soaks up information and knowledge and can like apply it very quickly, it also became the perfect antidote to the challenges that were coming up in our relationship. So although, like I said, I didn't have relationship experience, because this relationship is what brought personal development into my world. Everything I learned, I applied it right into the relationship. And it was like working, like each problem, like the challenge, it was like you said, God put them in front of us, because we were also being given the solution, like hand in hand with it, and was giving us the opportunity to say, like, are we really learning the lessons that we're meant to learn through these challenges? Because it's all happening here, right here. And I got to see like, oh, this is where it's all like, this is where, where they say like, it's the thing that's making you sick can also be the medicine. Like the medicine kind of brings up sometimes the symptoms a little bit more. That's what was happening for me. And that's what really like kept it going. It just became like personal development and the relationship. And what I started to see, kind of to your note, for us to be open books about like who we are, not only what our strengths are, but what our weaknesses are, is the work we do now. Like we are here to show that relationship isn't like all rainbows and sunshine and butterflies. There's stormy days and there's earthquakes and there's all of this stuff that happens, which it's the choice that we make, and knowing that the relationship is the place for all of us, like everyone who chooses to be in a devoted partnership with another, that's the place where you're going to get challenged the most, like, period. And so now, thanks to us going through and like committing to the work and then committing to one another, choosing over and over again each other despite whatever was pulling us apart, it's like, okay, like now we're in a place like we can show people like we're not perfect, but what people see in us as like, oh, we're, like this couple that people are like, wow, how do you do what you do? It's like, well, actually, we're just like you, but we just don't make our problems the worst thing or like the reason for us to like move apart. There are actually ways that we can see like, oh yeah, like I'm seeing a part of me in this that I wouldn't have seen before. And forget being on the same page. Sometimes we're just two different books and we just learn how to read each other's books. And like that's what it's about, like that's it. Like we're not on the same page, but hey, what page are you showing me on your book and what page are you showing me in your book? We're willing to read, like hand the book over and read what's in there and then get an understanding before we can move forward. It's like
That's amazing. That's amazing. It's funny. It's in part, it's funny. So like when I was dating my wife, in high school, I'm a young man and it's high school. And I wasn't taking that relationship serious, to the point where, I cheated on her, and we broke up and for a little while and whatever the case might be. And then we end up getting back together. And then I'm, next thing I know, I'm basically being shipped out by the Army to go to basic training and all these things. And so there's this thing where it's like, hey, I have this uncertain future ahead of me, and I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what it looks like for me, but I also don't know what it looks like for us. And so, in the end, we did get married, and we did, we're happily married and having our third kid now. But like those experiences, those moments in our life, really helped, as weird as that sounds, help catapult our relationship to what it is now, to where we can go through hard times and we can come back. It's easier for us to come back together because we've been through difficult times together before, where we understand, hey, like I don't want to be away from you and you don't want to be away from me. So the intent here is not to be so mad at each other that we're, I hate you, you hate me, let's get a divorce and never be together. It's there's something going on. We're frustrated with each other. What is it? What's the core reason why we're frustrated, and how can we get back to it? But like you, 100%, like you said, Aaron, like these things, if they didn't happen, right? As unfortunate as, especially for me in my case, if they didn't happen, I don't know where we would be. It's hard to say. Is like, where'd we be where we are today if those unfortunate events did not happen? Would our relationship be as strong as it is now if those unfortunate things did not happen? It's not to say people need to go out there and do these things. It's to say, like, like you guys said, God puts things in front of us, and it's a wall, but it's just a short enough wall or just a tall enough wall where it's like, yeah, I know you can jump over this wall, but it's on you to give yourself that confidence to say, like, I can jump over this wall, and then the next wall, and keep going and keep going. So it's amazing thing for any of us when we go into these relationships. And I will say, when I tell people all the time, so like I have a friend who just got engaged, and he's actually my best friend, but he's my best friend. He just got engaged, and I told him, I said, hey man, listen, I said, you've been in a relationship, that's great, you guys are engaged, it's great. I said, but when you get married, I said, here's the thing, you're going to think there's going to be a change that happens. And that's like, there is a change that happens. You guys, now you're officially married, and you guys are known as one unit versus two units, if you will. I said, but your relationship doesn't end when you get married. Your relationship just starts when you get married. When you get married, all the things that you thought would of what you thought marriage looked like, it's amplified now because you're with that person. You guys live. Your guys' names on the mortgage together. You guys' names on the electric bill. Like, you guys are together forever, right? Like, that's the commitment that you made to each other. So now any argument and everything it's like, hey, we can't just break up and say, like, you know what, I'm done with you. No, it's we're here and we're here. We have to figure it out together. And I told him, it's like, hey, so like a lot of people think I get married, oh, my life's gonna be coasting, it's easier and everything's. I was like, no, it's just started. The hard work, the effort is demanded of you more, because now you have to really show that person how committed you are to them and vice versa. But I don't want to just dreary or talk about seem like dreary things as if bad things happen, because you guys have a phenomenal relationship from what I see and what I can tell, and I think it's a beautiful thing that you guys have created. And one of the most beautiful things you've created is you have a son together. And so when you guys got married and you got together, did you was it I don't know, Aaron or even Harsha, was it like, hey, I want to have kids. What does that look like? Or was it just kind of like it happened and you were just like, man, this is a blessing?
That was its own journey, right? Because we were married for a few years before Messiah came into the picture.
That's right.
Yeah, we both had our own kind of perspective on that.
Yeah, I think we both knew that we wanted kids. I wanted kids sooner. I was coming from a mindset where I knew I was 5 years older than her, and I thought the sooner I have kids, the better it'll be because of my age. And I realized that that's a limiting belief. In fact, I'm very grateful that I didn't have kids earlier, because I feel like really we are just starting to adult in our 30s. So when I had Messiah in my mid 30s, is really the perfect timing to have that first child. And but I think we always knew that we wanted to have kids. Yes. How many kids? I think we're on different pages with that, but we're very close. We'll meet somewhere in the middle.
Two different books, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. For like, yeah, that's exactly what you said. We've always known, but it's just been this, like, we both have had our own journey in our relationship to parenting, where my relationship to parenting was one, like, as the vessel, right? Like the one carrying, the one to, like, that's a huge commitment, because like that's a whole full body, like, done, like it's just like we come from a different place as women and that on that topic. But then also my relationship to parenthood was one that I was really like working through in my journey of self-development and healing, and there was just a lot of things about myself that I knew were still present, that I knew were not going to allow me to be the kind of mother that I really wanted to be for my future child. And so I was a little bit more like, I wouldn't even say hesitant, but I wasn't fully in acceptance of. And it showed because my body just wasn't. Also, the way I was being wasn't the type of person that I was when we did finally conceive. Like, there was a shift in who I became as someone who wasn't, for example, like not taking care of myself for the sake of taking care of everything else around me. I put a lot of my energy outward, and as a result, I didn't have what I really needed to be able to just grow another being inside of my body. When we first got married, so one of the reasons that was, like he said, one of the hardest things at that time is we got married, and then in that same year, we lived together for the first time, which we hadn't done before. We're married, we're a married couple now, and also we were in business together. So because I was no longer doing the medical thing, I stepped into the business as his support. So we're like, we were just like all the time. Like, our office was in the basement of our home, so it was just like, it was a lot. And so it was just like too much. Yeah. And so we learned a lot. It was like a crash course in all the things. A lot of people who were ahead of us in that would say, like, I could never work with my husband, or I could never work with my wife. And we'd all be like, why? Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, we could do it. But like, we kind of got to see why people say that, especially also then like learning to be married and learning to live together, which are two also really big adjustments to make. So with all that going on right away, I guess a part of me just knew bringing a child in right away was just like, no way. Like, that would just not work. Even if we both wanted it wouldn't have happened. Um, and so luckily, like everything's been just divinely orchestrated. We learned things moved, and then I learned how to move through those parts of myself that were apprehensive about parenting, and then that switch happened in my relationship to parenting, and then just like naturally Messiah came into the picture.
Yeah, yeah. And I think with when we became pregnant, it just really allowed us the space to get back to ourselves in our own way. I saw a big shift with Harsha just going back to her own way of being, even with the whole pregnancy process and how she wanted to do it. She wanted to do it naturally in the home. So many people from the outside were coming in and saying, you can't do that. It's not the right way to do it. You got to be in the hospital. And for me, what I felt within is like, this is her body, it's her temple. She's the one that's growing this baby. I'm really not the person to, push or enforce, how things are supposed to be meant to be done. Like if this is her calling and what she's truly feeling, I'm here to support her in that process. And so, I really had to let go of any beliefs even I had, because it wasn't just from the outside world of people, but even in the medical system, right? Every time we used to go for checkups or, check-ins or whatever, they're always trying to push what their agendas were. And I give it to her through that whole process because she just really felt what was aligned with her and her body, and that's what she went with. Even to the point where, our son, we gave birth breech, and the doctors are telling us there's no way that could happen. And on top of that we wanted to do it naturally from our home, and our show was like, didn't matter. This is how she wanted to move forward.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. So like my wife wanted to do the home birth, and I was like, I don't know about all that.
I know that feeling.
What do you mean? Like at the house? Like at the time, I was like, we lived on base. I was like, we live on base. You know what I'm saying? Like, what do you mean at the house? You want to do it off of where? Like, how's this gonna happen? And like it was, and even though we didn't do it that way, there was a lot that I had to learn and understanding of where she was coming from and what that looked like. Because in my head, like for you, Aaron, it was just like, at least I assume it was like you, but it's like, this is supposed to happen at a hospital in a sterile environment where there are people who know what's going on. Like, I love you, and we all know we're adults here. We know how babies are made. But like, that's not my role. Like that, like, I don't, what do you want me to do? Like, what if, and then no, there are trained people who get paid to do this, and we should go see them. And so like, a lot of it was hesitancy, scaredness by me. But like even now, right? Like, I think for going on a third, I don't know if she would still want to do like a water birth, like at home and a water birth type thing. I think she does. At the same time, having gone through it twice, I think she's kind of like, but the hospital's a little bit more controlled and contained. So like, it's a little toss up conversation for another time for me and her, but she'll decide. But still, I totally understand it. I did want to make a comment about you guys working together. Like that is I commend you for it. Because it's part of me is like, okay, I can imagine working with my wife, but Queon at work is a very serious person. So like, I'm speaking in third person, but I do it on purpose. Like, I'm a very serious person. If I'm working and I'm passionate about it, especially getting paid for it to support family, whatever, the person I am it becomes, I guess I fill the role really well. And where for me and being in the military, a lot of that naturally is to be a leader. And so if my wife were to work with me, she would be getting a different Queon, where it's like, hey, I'm very passionate about what I do and I take it very seriously. And, the standards that I have for myself, which are pretty high, I don't hold everybody else to those high standards, but I hold them to high standards. And so like, if you're not meeting that, I'm not afraid to speak up. So like saying, coming over the top to my wife, it would be difficult. And then having to get in the car and drive home together, if you will, if we were driving somewhere, and be like, so how was work? And just rubbing her like, hey, I love you. It was a great day. Even though like 2 hours ago, I just got to yelling at her. Like it would be so hard. And so I commend you guys because like it's like the Queon me, like I love business. I love and like so like starting my own business like I do now, like I have now, like it's great, it's phenomenal. I love it. But like yeah, I know me. You know what I'm saying? I know myself. And so like it takes a lot you got to understand the person you're working with, I imagine. So
I love that you mentioned that because really that first year when we decided to work together, like this is how you know that we've actually had a transformation in our lives and who we're being is completely different because I never thought we'd be able to ever work together again. It was that bad when we first came together and tried to work with one another. And I understood why people said, it's very difficult. There's a small percentage of couples that can be in the same place together at the same time, but just sort of a testament to where we're at now because of the growth that we've had, we are able to work together now. And it's easier for us because we don't have to really take off the hats in what we do now because who we are being in our work is the same person that we are when we're in our homes with one another or with our kids or with our family. We're that same person. So I think that's a big part of it is when we're with our clients, we're the same. When we're with each other, we're the same. So it's like, we don't have to change that hat at all now. So that's why it works.
Yeah. Makes a difference to like what we're choosing, what like the vehicle is, right? Like the vehicle we're in now is like 100,000% in alignment with like what we both have. Like it really on every level, it lights us up to do what we're doing. And even like the nitty gritties and things and our roles and responsibilities are really like cleanly laid out and they're pretty equal, even though they're in their own individual space. Whereas before it was the real estate business, which Aaron has himself said, like he was very successful in that business and he was really good at it, but his heart wasn't fully in it. And so that in itself, like making it work with, like it just, like that dissonance was amplified like way more, bringing our relationship into it. And also the role was a little bit more like he was the one calling like all the shots. Same thing like you said, it made it hard for him to do his job that the way he wanted to at the time or to be able to do it because the person he was giving orders to wasn't just his assistant that he could just say like not really care like in a way what he's saying. Of course you want to care what you're saying to your assistant, but you know what I mean?
The ramifications weren't the same.
Your wife, like it's different. And so that made it difficult for him to like fully step into that role. So we saw the breakdown in it. And so I want to point to it's not just like any place that we're working together. It's the fact that we're working together in a vehicle that really is who we are. And like you said, it's who we are all the time. And we get to now bring it to others and like create a business out of it.
That's wonderful. So now coming for me to kind of come in full circle going back to my first question when I asked you guys regarding, what you guys do now. And so how does that translate for you guys being parents, right? Because like, again, people hear what you guys do or where's the breath work and you have clients and you're doing those different things and empowering people, right? Like you guys do a lot really to help people and having these clients and, so how does that translate to being a parent, right? Because are you guys, one moment, like you kind of just mentioned, you put the the parent hat on and then you take it off and you put the work hat on and you're doing this thing, but then, you got your little one over there and you're like, am I doing enough? Am I not doing enough? Am I spending too much time over here? Like, so like, how does owning your own business, operating that, and both you guys are in it. How's that translation for parenting for you guys?
I would say it's living with intention. Our business is all about how to be more intentional with yourself, more intentional with your breath, right? More intentional with your thoughts, words, or expression. And so even when it comes to parenting, it's like our intention is very clear. What that looks like can always be very different, but like what we're coming into parenting is so intentional now, and that's how it translates into that. So what that looks like in a day, for example, we know it's very important for both of us to get our own time, like time to ourselves. It's also very important for us that we have time together as a family, like we're sharing a meal together and like we're co-existing, co-creating together. Then it's also very important for us to have time together in the business. Then it's also very important for us to have our own time in the business because we have like business has different legs that each of us leads in our own way. So, like, when we just know, like, our intention is to fulfill on each of these points, what our day gets to look like each day, we just sit and set the intention each day. It's like, okay, so today, like, my intention is like this and this. My intention is this and this. We know our non-negotiable intention with our son is this. And so, like, what's our game plan for the day? And how are we going to round off and so like that each day, although there's similarity because those chunks of time are all present, but the order in which it's happening might shift based on like what's going on for me being a woman with my cycle. It can shift in that way for him based on like different calls and like how late he's been up, like it shows up differently in that. But circling back, I would say it's intentionality. This is what I'm saying. I'm curious if you would like add anything.
Yeah, I was going to say something very similar. Going back to intention, it's like the work that we do, we're able to bring it into our parenting style is because even what we do with our clients is like, in a way, it's connecting with our son as well on the same lines, like on the same levels, right? So we're very fortunate for that because we're able to create that space together. And like you said, with either like, when we have our one-on-one times with our son or we have it as a family, we're able just to really be intentional with that time with one another.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm envious sometimes. I say sometimes, not all the time, because I do appreciate my car ride homes are my own, my alone time. But I am envious at times where where I could create something such as you guys have created. Essentially from my home where it's mine, it's mine and my wife's, and we're doing it, and she has her role and I have my role, and we spend time with kids, come together, whatever the case might be. But at the same time, like I said, like my drive home from work, so like 20-minute drive to work in the morning, because I'm leaving by 5:45 every morning. But it's a 45-minute drive home every day, and that 45 minutes is while I hate it because it's 45 minutes because I'm stuck in traffic. It is also it's the necessary time that where it's enough time for me to flip and switch my brain to, okay, now it's time to go into dad mode, not Staff Sergeant Wilcox mode at work, where where I'm thinking about is different and where I'm at and whatever the case might be. And so it gives me enough time to come home, and then when I'm come home and my kids run up to me and they're like, Dad, and they're super excited to see me, and that re-solidifies as, okay, this is dad time. But then also doing the podcast and everything, I also have to be realistic. I have to do, okay, I'm devoting time for them. Then I'm also, okay, I got to put my brain to Mediocre Dads and what that looks like and growing. So it's very busy, but it's one of those things where it's like, I love it because, my kids get to see the hard work that dad's doing, but then it also gets, for me, it's like, hey, it's worth it because my kids, when I come home every day, there's still the dad's home. They love me. They're excited to see me. And it's not oh, dad's home. Great. What is he going to be doing now? It's clear that I'm doing what I'm supposed to. I'm on the right path. And so it's amazing. So like I said, again, I commend you guys on a lot of things because, where you guys are, what you guys are doing. A lot of couples, and again, I'm sure you've heard it before, would be like, man, I would love for that. But at the same time, my husband's a jerk. And or like, working with my wife, man, she's so beautiful, but I could name 5 things that she'll do wrong. Oh man, and like so many people, like different people that they're just, these things in their mind, like, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. I love her too much to do it, but but I love it for y'all. Cause like I said, you guys, it's not to say you're doing the impossible, but it is to say like what you guys are doing and how the willingness that you guys have to work together to say, hey, this is not just it's like when you get married, right? This is not just a thing I'm doing because it just happens to be the closest person to me. No, this is a commitment, and this is essentially forever. And what does it look like for us? How do we commit it to each other, to the business, to our son, to our future kids, to show them that like, hey, mom and dad are killing it, and we love you. And in part of ways how we show we love you is showing you like what we do in our day-to-day life and how we bring joy to happiness to others. If we can do that, we can bring it to you as well, and ultimately raise you up to have that joy and happiness as well. It's a beautiful thing, because ultimately, at the end of the day, we want our kids to be happy, And so kind of going in here with the two more questions, but for you, first, mainly for you, Harsha, here is, you mentioned your parents were really pushing you to be the doctor, and going down that route, going down that path. And so you not doing what you do now. This is a two-part question. One, are your parents, have they welcomed what you do now to the point where they're like, man, oh, my daughter, I'm glad she does what she does, right? Versus, I still wish she would have been the doctor. And then the second part of that question is, having that experience of where it was really pushed on you to do that one thing. Do you have that pressure for your son in the sense of like, hey, he doesn't have to do what we do, what we're doing right now, but is there in your mind of like, hey, I would really want for him to ensure success in life, and I would really want him to do that or do something in that regards, whether it's a lawyer, doctor, whatever the case might be.
Yeah. So the first question that you asked, it's funny that you asked that, because up until maybe like even like a couple of years ago, I'd say, if I would have told, like, my dad might have been, are you sure? Like, like med school's still available. Like, are you sure like they had kind of like accepted it. Like they had, like, obviously, like, we can't control what my daughter does, right? She's doing her own thing. I'd always been like a headstrong, kind of stubborn child, but also very, very compliant in that way. But I would say, like, up until like a few years ago, they may still have had a little bit of that, like, mostly for the security that job offers, not for like, they didn't want me to be like living my purpose, helping people, all of that. They just saw that the work that I was doing, in a way, I'm self-employed and I have to go out there, and it's newer, even though breathwork is an ancient practice that's been around like since the beginning of civilization. In terms of like how our system of life is currently set up, there isn't the same security in this line of work that they could see me having if I went the medical route. But at the end of the day, I think they couldn't deny seeing like me just so much more fulfilled and willing to face the challenge of figuring out how to create stability in this area, versus doing the thing that was sure securing stability, but like I was just like, it would have not been hard to see that I was like not like, I just didn't want to live another day in that way anymore. Like it just was taking all the life out of me to go the other way. So it was a different challenge, and I think they accepted, as they know for themselves, anything that's going to challenge you to want to like rise up and like bring your chest up higher to face that challenge more is the challenge to choose, versus the challenge of like the thing that's going to beat you down, and one day you're going to be like, why did I do all of this to begin with, kind of thing. So I think like now I can say like wholeheartedly, my parents are very much supportive, and they will even send me like, look, like this is breathwork thing. Like they are encouraging me, showing me how my life path, my chosen path of work now is actually going to be super successful. Like they see it for themselves, and that's beautiful. But I do want to know, like, in order to come this far, I had to completely like detach from them ever really accepting it. Like I had to let go of that being a possibility. So the fact that it's here is really nice, but I didn't need it to continue on, kind of thing. And then how for my son, I say I want him to experience all of life that's available for him, and for me to not in any way be the limiting factor for him in any way. I want him to just feel that I'm fully supporting him in whatever he's choosing to do, and that he can see the benefit of choosing something that not only lights him up, but lights up those that he's working with and serves in a way that's supporting the betterment of himself and those around him. So again, it's about intention. It's about me allowing him to get to know himself, to get to know these things sooner rather than later. Like for me, it was a bit later that I figured out what my core desire and purpose really was. And if he can get that earlier on, then it's about just going out there and trying different things and seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work, and then choosing what he wants to continue on with. Also, just like not ever having to worry that the financial aspect is the only reason to want to choose something over another. Like just because something provides you financial security, I just don't want that to be a factor for him to choose what it's like. I want him to feel free and flowing in that area of life that he can go out and then choose like what's going to actually amplify, create more security for himself, but also he's going to can see himself doing long run and is connected to something that he's naturally really good at. So I kind of like I'm going to allow him to show me. And also, like, I'm going to be that, like, when you're bowling, like, the guards that allow him to not fall too far off in his exploration and to go into any areas. But I just feel like because that's, like, life is life. We don't know. I don't know what's going to come up for us as a challenge and what he's going to go off to explore for himself. But I just know he has a home to come home to that is going to, like, be able to help him feel like he can be himself and explore himself in a safe place and then choose like from there what he wants to do and ask us if he's curious enough like what we would advise him if he wants our advice in that area. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because I asked that because you guys do have a son, obviously you know that, but raising a son into a young man and then into a man, both parents play a detrimental role in that development of whether it's a son or a daughter, but in your guys' specific case, it's a son. And so, the mother definitely plays a key essential role into the development of any young man, especially that love aspect of life, of knowing what love looks like and what it is, in that sense. And so I asked that because, as you're raising a son and, a young man, parents want to protect, right? And they want to look out for their kids, and they want nothing but their kids to be okay. And you mentioned your dad, right? And for a little while, it was like, hey, medical school still available, type thing, right? Like it was the sense of, I understand it because it was the sense of like, hey, I care about your happiness, but I'm sorry, but like I want you to be taken care of, and then your happiness can come later. You know what I mean? Like type thing where it's like I have to pick one. If I'm going to pick one, I'm going to pick the one that's going to ensure there's security, there's stability, and then we can figure out the happiness part later. And so I totally resonate, totally get that piece, and I know even now you guys get that. So for you, Aaron, even then, right? So like you are raising a young man and to become a young man and a successful man, right? And being a man yourself, you understand the burden that is put on us to be providers, whether that we're in a relationship or not in a relationship, but a sense to be providers for our families, our future families, or even providers for ourselves, right? So it's really hard and difficult for men to be able to rely on other people in a sense of like, hey, I'm not really figuring it out right now, blase, blase. And you're like, you're a man, you need to figure it out sooner rather than later type thing. So for you, and raising your son and your role as far as raising your son, right? What part do you think that you'll struggle with, or do you even struggle now where you're like, hey, I want my son to do what he wants to do in the future, whatever that looks like for him. At the same time, I understand how unforgiving the world can be. And, while I could only hope he can get 3 to 5 chances, not saying he will need 3 to 5 chances, but 3 to 5 chances trying different things. The reality is in some aspects is we don't have 3 to 5 chances. And so like for you, is that something that's on your mind that's weighing heavily on your mind or burdening your shoulders, where you're just like, hey, like, I understand some of these things coming from the male perspective, what that looks like. So as your role as a father, are there things that you try to kind of like help navigate, or is it kind of more of the, hey, like it would all work out in the end type thing?
Yeah, I think for myself, I'm really a guide for my son and my future children. And what's most important for me is I want them to know that I love them absolutely no matter what. Doesn't matter how much they fail in life. I believe that everything that transpires is always a lesson and a blessing. And so whatever life is going to throw at them, it's meant to be that way. And I'm here to be and act as a support and a guide for him. And that no matter what he does, I will always love him. Right. And it's interesting because before having our first child, I didn't think this way at all. I thought like, man, I can't wait to share with them everything that I know, and I'm going to teach him to be just like me, and he's going to play all the sports like I played, even to this day, because growing up, my love for sports and specifically hockey, like I love playing hockey. I still play it till this day. And, so many people come up to me and they always ask,
Forget you're
like,
from Canada, so like hockey is a big
yeah,
deal.
exactly.
Like,
There you
yeah.
go. Hey, there's a lot of Americans that play hockey too.
Yeah, look, I thought I could do the whole thing, but then I realized putting ice skates on, I'm good. That's meant for somebody else in this world, not me.
Yeah, yeah, for
I'm sorry, I
sure.
didn't mean to interrupt. You said hockey, and I was like, oh, that's right, Canada. I'm thinking football, but Canada.
Yeah,
Got you.
yeah. But that's exactly it. There's so many people that have come up to me after becoming a father and like, when are you gonna get the skates? When are you gonna put them on a team? When are you gonna get them on the ice? And really, like for me, I have no attachment to that. Like it's gonna be his choice. Of course, I'm gonna guide him and I'm gonna take him to like learn how to skate. But whether he's gonna want to continue on with it and play actual hockey on a team in a league, like I'm really gonna leave that decision up to him. Like he may be here to be great in something else, right? And who am
Yeah.
I to say and choose his path? And I think I've learned that, and it goes to the same with what he wants to do in life. I feel like what's going to come to him and what his purpose is and what he's going to love to do will be what he discovers. It's not for me to discover for him.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's it's so true. I asked that question, and I'm not to like pigeonhole you guys into to one answer or make you say something else. But I asked that question because I know a guy that I worked with, and he's originally from the Middle East, and so like him, when I was talking to him about parenting, and his like he has a son and a daughter, and we were talking, and he was telling me how he was like, hey, Mike, his daughter is going to be a doctor, his son's going to be a lawyer, and I said, well, what if they want to do something else? He goes, they can do that after they become the doctor, after they become a lawyer. And I'm like, I mean, but yeah, aren't you forcing your ideals or almost essentially your dreams onto your kids or what you want to do? And he's like, he goes, no, like this is just what my family has always done, and this is what we know, and this is what we do. And so like for some families, and especially for some cultures, it's heavily to like, hey, no, you will do this thing regardless if you love it or not. And in some regards, it's a beautiful thing, because to have a family full of doctors and lawyers, you're like, man, that family is very well off, and then they're doing what they're doing. But at the same time, none of us actually really look at when we go see a doctor, for example. None of us sit there and take the time to say, well, hey, doc, do you love what you do? I mean, I don't know if you want to know the answer, especially if you're there for something serious, but like, like, hey, do you love what you do? Is your heart in this every single day? And if the doctor's like, no, honestly, I want to go be a school teacher, and you're like, you're giving me surgery tomorrow? Is there someone else? But like, you know what I mean? Like we never really sit there and ask these individuals like, hey, is this really what you wanted to do your entire life? Or do you love it? And are you really behind it? Right. Like in this, from a sense of like, hey, like you are successful in the terms of societal terminology, if you will, but like, is this really what you want to do? And even then for pushing it on our kids, it's like, all I want is my kids to be successful. And I want them to surpass me in the sense of like, where they don't have to struggle. And I think it's one of those things as parents that we get especially when you see those, they're so they're so small when they come out of the womb, and they're precious, and they're still precious as they grow, but you always remember how small they were when you first met them, and you're like, I don't want anything to happen to you. So like, to imagine you to go through the struggles that I've had to go through in parts of my life that were pretty hard. Like I would take that over for you any day. But like, those struggles that we went through ultimately helped us become who we are today, and even help us become better parents. So it's hard to sit there and to balance of, do I let them struggle and kind of figure it out themselves, or do I kind of just force the issue and say, no, you want to be a doctor, right? You want to be a doctor?
Yeah.
So I can understand the struggles of that, where you're just like, oh my goodness. And like I said, Aaron, when I was asking you in particular, your role in that matter, it's because, it's, as men, as we sit here and when we have me having my son here soon, and you already having your son, it is scary to realize, to know how unforgiving the world is and can be, especially for men. And so it's almost like I don't want it to him to have to go through certain things, and that be, God forbid, that be the thing that breaks him. Because we don't know how much our kids can handle, because we don't know how much we could have handled at the time, but like we don't want that be the thing that breaks our kids. We're like, oh my goodness, if only I had just done this one thing, almost living in regret. So like, I'm not saying you guys are, but we're having the conversation, so I'm just bringing it up. And like,
just like wanting to bubble out of my heart to share on this note. That's like something I heard that really resonated with me, also because I know we're all people of belief here. And, Aaron shared with me after your conversation with him, you had a chat about like the hierarchy of like the first relationship is with God, right? And so as a mother too, like like you said, when I saw my son growing from like nothing to like what he is still continuing to grow, I'm like, first of all, I'm not doing all of that. Like, there's not like I'm controlling every part of him that's growing. Like, there is a higher power that's clearly doing this, because he's growing each day on his own. And so to that, like this belief, because we get fearful, right? Like, what if the struggles and the challenges of life are going to take, like, we don't want that for our kids. But also, we're people saying that, like, God is number one, whatever, however we define God for ourselves to be. When we can trust that higher power is with us, then we can also trust that same higher power is with our children as well. And in the same degree that our children can see us trusting that, then as long as we know that that's a value that they're getting in their life, no matter where they go, even if they're in like the deepest, darkest shadow of the world, knowing that because for us, God, that relationship to God is number one for us, that will be with them in their darkest time. And that is what will help them get out of it, not us. Like, that's not an us job. That's for them and God to figure out. And I believe that's what we're all here to do. And on that note, like, you can tell when someone's really into their job. Like, if a doctor is really meant to be a doctor, you don't have to ask them. They're like, this person was like meant to be a doctor and you're in it, or a school teacher. But you can tell when a person's doing something that they're like, the fact that you have to ask them is like, they're probably not, like, so I say it every day with our kids. If we can like see that light in them and recognize like, oh, this thing right now is what's lighting them up. And it might not be the same thing tomorrow, but one day they'll figure out the pattern and they'll be able to follow that light. And then they'll find a space for themselves in the world where they're going to be secure financially, where they're going to be serving their family, like providing for their family, really fulfilled in themselves. They'll take off all of those things. And like I said, like, that's going to be between them and God. The world's full of possibilities. Like, it's not just a one road thing. That's what we believe, and like, that's what I believe. And so as a parent, if I can just share that to whatever other parent is listening to this right now, like, especially if you say you believe in God, believe that that same God is also what your child is like getting led by and guided by, no matter what. And like, we can rest and take a deep breath going, like, it'll be okay. Like, we'll make it through whatever it is.
No, absolutely.
I think like with everything that Harsha just shared, like, all we can really do is just pray and connect with God and pray for them. And because what I know and what we believe is that every experience we have in this life is going to take us through a state of emotion that all of us are going to be meant to feel in some experience. We don't know what that experience is, but for us trying to stop that experience from happening, it's like it's going to come in another form, in another way for our child to experience that. And it could be even worse. So why not allow them to go through whatever they're going through, having complete trust and faith that God is with them. And once you're at that state, then you can let them go and they will learn and grow, and there'll be blessings for you as well, lessons for you as well.
Yeah, it's it's a beautiful thing. I pray with my daughters every night, and the thing that I continue to pray is just for the Lord's protection over them and anything and everything that they do, because at the end of the day, like you guys said, like we can't control. We know we're not in control as much as we would like to be. At least for myself, like I'd like to be in control. We're not, and I'm not. And so it's one of those things. It's just saying, hey, like if I claim to have this belief in God and knowing that He is the orchestra of my life, He's also the orchestra of my kid's life. And so like He does everything in our favor rather than to bring us down, if you will, and keep us down, right? Like we have to go through we go through these certain challenges, certain things in our lives in order for us to come out as that new person or that better person, if you will, that He wanted us to be, rather than us just giving us what we want and what we hope for, and then being like, oh, look at me, but we're not able to handle it because we hadn't gone through certain things in order to get there. So it's a beautiful thing. Man, I love all of this. I love this conversation. You guys are amazing to talk to. I really, it's one of those things where when I'm talking to you guys, for whatever, like I'm a very hyper, like if you will, person. You probably tell, but whenever I talk to you, I do feel myself needing to be like, oh man, I need to match what's going on here. I'm at like a 15. They're at like a 7. I need to bring myself down to at least a 10 right now. But it's amazing. It's a good thing. I say it's a good thing, right? Because it allows me to think clearly and ask my questions to get through so in order for them to make sense. So final question for both of you. You guys you're growing, you're succeeding, you're doing what you're doing. But there are parents out there, or people who are just got married and hoping to become parents here one day. What advice would you give them? Like if you had to give them a piece of advice that, that really resonated with you, that stuck with you, or a piece of wisdom that stuck with you guys as you were going through your journey to get to where you are now, what would that be for new parents or even that new couple who is just getting married and wanting to do similar to what you guys are doing?
Sure. I do.
Sure.
Okay. For me, the advice that I would give anyone that is either new in their relationship or a new parent is try not to fix either your kids or fix your partner, and understand that whatever they're experiencing is their truth. And it may not be your truth because it's not the way you see it or the way you're feeling, but they don't act a certain way just for the hell of acting that way. There's truth behind it. So understand that your truth may not be their truth, and whatever they're experiencing, you have to be able to see it for them, right? So I find that in a relationship, we're always trying to fix our partner or trying to like fix our kid to be a certain way. So just to be able to sit with that. And I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Yeah. But do you got anything, Artha or Harsha? I'm sorry.
That's a really good one. And like then there's like more of like a need to fix like what I would say is every relationship is like really just mirroring you to yourself in a deeper way. And so if you're finding something that you're looking at your partner and it's like that needs to be fixed, well, what in that is actually a mirror to something in me? At the end of the day, it's like this, like what's within the sanctuary of your relationship, you get to call the shots. You get to create your own rules in that space, because there are so many rules. Like as soon as you walk out the doors in this world, many are unspoken rules, many are written out, but they're rules that may not apply to what you've created within the sanctuary of your relationship. And when it gets confusing, when there's rules out there that are showing up, or ways of being, just come home to like, okay, what's have we talked about? And then bring that conversation home of like, hey, this is what like is happening out there. This is what I think. Okay, like, so are we creating from just what the rules are out there, or is that really a rule for us? And if it's yes, that's a rule for me. Okay, let's work with that here and make it a part of our relationship. Then also it's like, is that really a rule for me and you? No, actually, that's their rules. We don't care about that. Okay, so then what's our rule here? Create that and hold that as your, like, that's your law above anything else, and hold that as like, that's what creates, I think, a strong foundation under the relationship that's like your own versus what everybody else is telling you to do.
Absolutely. You know, guys, as a role, as parents, it's our role, it's important, or one of our important roles as parents is to establish that foundation, especially as they're young. And I know you guys know this, is especially because as they get older and as they start to traverse the world as individuals, you know, you have to rely that the foundation, the information, the knowledge that you gave them when they were younger sticks with them, in order for them when they do start going out there, that they have this thing to lean back on to say, no, I know that my mom or my dad taught me this is what respect looks like. And what you're doing is not being respectful, you're being disrespectful. So I also know my parents taught me A, B, and C. And so like, I'm going to remove myself from the situation, whatever the case may be, whatever it is. But that foundation is essential. And a lot of it, and I think a lot of this world, unfortunately, is not getting that foundation, because a lot of parents are unfortunately not really understanding the consequences of their roles, especially not being participants in their roles and whatnot. So that being said, I appreciate both of you coming on. It was an amazing opportunity to talk to both of you. As usual, of course, I love talking to you guys. It's amazing. I love it. Hey team, everything for them will be in the description below. As I said before, check out them on Instagram. I follow y'all on Instagram. I do check out your guys' stuff. I do think it's an amazing what you guys put out there, and just what you're offering to the world. Because I think it's something, again, as I said this to you, Harsha, like, we overlooked something as simple as just as breathing, you know, because we do it every day, right? We overlook what that actually looks like, and the ramifications of not doing it in a with intention, right? Versus just saying like, I'm breathing out, it's not making me feel any better. I don't get it. You know what I'm saying? But with intention, you start to realize, oh, wow, okay, I can see the change, giving myself 5 minutes to kind of really focus, and then boom, continue to attack my day and go from there. So check out their stuff, guys. It's in the description. It'll be in the description below. Really looking forward for all these. Check out the previous episodes with the individually, and you can see some of these questions. Some of what we talked about will make a lot more sense because we talked individually and came together. So, but with that being said, that's all I got. Thanks for joining us, Harsha and Aaron. Thank you for coming on. Hey guys, as I usually say, being mediocre is a choice. You have to refuse to be mediocre every single day. That's all I got. Mediocre Dads out.